Students, welcome back. We've been doing this particular topic, Bernier and the degenerate East. With this, we move on to the next topic right here, 6.2. We are talking about a more complex society. Right here in this particular topic, a more complex society, we'll be actually discussing about what Bernier has been trying to tell us, and we will see through the eyes of the Bernier what Mughal society meant to him. So here we get a picture or a glimpse of what Bernier has been telling us about the Mughal society. So first of all, it clearly states that the Mughal state was a tyrannical state, and then he says that it also gives us a hint about a complex Mughal society right here. So being a tyrannical state and a complex, giving us a hint about a complex social reality, it is giving us the real picture of what is going on right there during that particular time when he visited the Mughal Empire. So when we are talking about, and while we are reading this particular, or we are talking about the ideas or the thoughts of Bernier about the Mughal society, we should also think about this particular part that Bernier has been trying to compare the Indian society with the Western society. So there is a more like of a comparison right here. So when he's trying to compare, he's trying to, he's trying to praise the Western society, and on the other hand, he's giving a very negative picture of the Indian society. So while you are reading, while you are going through this particular paragraph, you need to keep this in mind that Bernier had made a predetermined picture about the Indian society. So here it says that the Mughal state was a tyrannical state. Then apart from that, he says that it gives us a hint about the social reality. Bernier also says that the artisans did not have any incentives. Now, how can it be possible where you find that the artisans at that particular period of time were the one who were earning a lot of money at that time, because they were doing a lot of hard work in coming up with new projects right there. So it says, but he says that artisans had no incentives. Apart from it, it also said that the manufacturers were in decline. So people were not manufacturing anything. So a lot of manufacturing was there in decline. But also says that the reason behind the manufacturing being getting decline was that the reason was that the state used to keep a major part of the profit which was made by the merchants. So this is something which you can contradict, because at that particular period of time where you find that the Mughals were ruling over India, the merchants were trading all over the world, especially with the Persians and the Arabics. So we cannot. There is a contradiction which is coming right here. But still, it says that profit was accumulated by the states, and therefore a poor picture of the artisans can be clearly seen right here. Apart from that, you find that there also existed the merchant community. So he's trying to give us a picture or a glimpse. It is trying to say that the merchant community also existed during that particular period of time. Moving forward to the next paragraph, it says that the 15% of the population lived in the towns, calling them camp towns. Now, why were those towns known as camp towns? Because you find that the imperial camp or the soldiers were living right there in these towns, and just because of the soldiers, the towns were able to survive. So the existence of the town depended upon the imperial soldiers. So that is why it says existence of the town depended upon the imperial camp. Now, furthermore, we find that Bernier has basically divided the towns on the basis of the occupation. So we have different names which are coming up due to the occupation. Now Bernier says that he had seen manufacturing town, he has seen trading town, port town, pilgrimage town. Now these are different types of towns which he has stated in the book, describing the various types of towns that existed during this particular period of time. Now let's move with the reading part right here, going with 6.2. A more complex social reality. While Bernier's preoccupation with projecting the Mughal state as tyrannical is obvious, his description occasionally hinted at a more complex social reality. So he says that Bernier is trying to project a Mughal state as a tyrannical, but also is trying to give us a hint of a very complex society right there. He says, Further he says, for instance, he felt that artisans had no incentive to improve the quality of their manufacturers since profit were appropriated by the state. So he says, as I said, it has already been given, I have given you a brief about that the artisans did not have any sort of incentives because the Mughals or the states were trying to make away with most of the profit which was gained by the merchants. Moving forward, at the same time, he conceded that vast quantities of the world's precious metal flowed into India as manufacturers were exported in exchange for gold and silver. He also noticed the existence of prosperous merchant community engaged in a long distance exchange. So he says that he's talking about the artisans and their poor conditions, and the other hand he's saying that they were trying to, the artisans were basically whatever things were manufactured during that particular period of time, so they were also trying to trade with other parts of the world. He says manufacturers were exported in exchange for gold and silver. So they were getting gold and silver in exchange of whatever they had, they were trying to trade with. That clearly showed that whatever they traded with or whatever they were manufacturing, those were some of those very precious things which had a cost or a price at an international market. Moving forward to the next paragraph, we'll talk about the towns right here. It says, in fact, during the 17th century, about 15% of the population lived in the towns. So as I said, 15% of the population lived in the towns. This was on average higher than the proportion of urban population in Western Europe in the same period. In spite of this, Bernier described Mughal cities as camp towns, by which he meant towns that owned their existence and dependent for their survival on the imperial camp. So we can clearly see that 15% of the population were living in the towns, and this was far more better than the urban centers of the Western countries. But still is trying to criticize that these towns were merely just because the imperial soldiers were living right there, and the existence of the town depended upon the preoccupation of these soldiers, who were the real consumers during in this particular town, where the merchants were selling their goods. And he says he believed that these came into existence when the imperial court moved in and rapidly declined when it moved out. So here he is believing. He has not seen anything. He is trying to believe. He is assuming something where he is saying that he believes that the imperial, due to the existence or coming in of the imperial court, the town existed, and when the imperial court walked out or settled somewhere else, the existence of the town collapsed or declined. He suggested that they did not have viable social and economical foundations but were dependent on imperial patronage. So the towns did not depend upon their own ability to survive, but they depended upon the imperial soldiers, the imperial court, the people and the king and the kingsmen and the courtiers, who were the first one to buy the products from these towns, and that is why these towns existed. Moving on to the next part, we have, as in the case of the question of the ownership, Bernier was drawing an oversimplified picture. There were all kinds of towns: manufacturing towns, trading towns, port towns, sacred centers, pilgrimage towns, etc. Their existence is an index of the prosperity of the merchant communities and professional classes. So he says these towns existed right here because the merchants and the professional classes existed right there, and they were the one who were basically promoting these types of towns, the existence of these types of towns right there during the Mughal period. Merchants often had a strong community or king ties, and were often organized into their own caste cum occupational bodies. In Western India, these groups were called Mahajan. So we come across a name called Mahajan through the words of Bernier. So these are merchants who are basically known as Mahajans, or a group of people who are merchants known as Mahajans, and the chief, the Seth, and their chief was known as Seth. In urban centers such as Ahmedabad, the Mahajans were collectively represented by the chief of the merchant community, who was called the Nagar Seth. So these Mahajans, when whose chief was Seth, and these Seth, they used to settle in urban places, and the leader of these Seth was known as the Nagar Seth. So this word can be clearly seen in most of the old books stating giving us or telling us the stories of ancient time, where we find names like Nagar Seth and Nagar Upadhyay. We find all these names coming up right there. So these are the leaders of that particular town or the area. Let's move on to the last paragraph. Other urban groups included professional classes such as physicians, Hakim or Vaid, teachers, Pandit or Mullah, lawyers, Vakil, painters, architects, musicians, calligraphers, etc. So we have other artisans and other professionals right there. So we can clearly count right on our fingers the number of people, number of professionals that has existed or that lived in that particular time, apart from the merchants. While some depended on imperial patronage, many made their living by serving other patrons, while still others served ordinary people in crowded markets or bazaars. So he says that there are two types of people. He said that first type of people, the one who are trying to, serve the rich ones, and there are other people who are trying to serve the common people. So here we come to this at the end of this particular topic, a more complex social reality through the eyes of the Bernier. So you can clearly go through these some of the lines which I have taken from the paragraph, and you need to come up with this, revise these questions in a proper way. Let me give you some questions right here again. One of the questions which might be asked is, what are camp towns? What are camp towns? Then we have another question which might be asked, what are the different types of towns as stated by Francis Bernier during the Mughal period? I am going to repeat the question. What are the different types of towns that existed during the Mughal period through the eyes of the Bernier? When you see through the eyes of the Bernier. So these are two types of questions. Thank you. Okay, now moving up to the next topic right here, women slaves, sati and laborers. So here we see the thinking of the Indian society, or you can say the thinking of the travelers about the Indian society or during the Mughal period. What the travelers had thought about the women slaves and the sati system and about the laborers right here. Okay. At the end of the class, you can go through these questions right here, and you will be able to easily answer these questions once I have explained this particular topic. So going on with this particular last topic, which is women slaves, sati and laborers. Travelers who had left written accounts were generally men who were interested in and sometimes intrigued by the condition of the woman in the subcontinent. So these travelers who have traveled through India, they are basically, most of them, they are men, so they give us a very good idea about the condition of the woman right there, because they were much more interested about the condition about the woman, condition of the woman that existed during that particular period of time while they were traveling during India. Sometimes they took social inequities for granted as a natural state of affairs. For instance, slaves were openly sold in markets like any other community and were regularly exchanged as gifts. So The travelers have taken these things as granted because things happened so frequently and from day to day time that they consider that this is something which is very, something which is very usual, something which is very common right there, which is, it is not unusual thing which is going on right there in the Indian society, where the buying and selling of the slave is taking place. Says, for instance, slaves were openly sold in markets like any other commodity and were regularly exchanged as gifts. So they were sold as commodity and they were exchanged as gifts. So the people were used to give slaves as gifts to their friends or their loved ones. When Ibn Battuta reached Sindh, he purchased horses, camels, and slaves as gifts for Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So you need to underline this particular sentence where he is saying that Ibn Battuta has purchased horses, camels and slaves for Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. When he reached Multan, he presented the governor with a slave and horse together with raisins and almonds. So we have another point right here that he has actually presented the governor with a slave, horses, almond and raisins. Muhammad bin Tughlaq informs Ibn Battuta was so happy with the sermon of a preacher named Nasiruddin that he gave him 100,000 tankas and 200 slaves. So here you find there are two things which you need to understand. First of all, the way Muhammad bin Tughlaq is giving respect to the people, the learned one, especially the preacher when he's talking about. And the second thing right here is that this is a very exaggerated situation, a price which is given 200 slaves. So when you talk about 200 slaves, which basically it found is being written right here and being informed by Ibn Battuta, an exaggerated situation where you find 200 slaves being given. So the word 200 clearly defines that the trading or you can say the buying and the selling of the slaves was so frequently done that it never mattered what number of slaves are being gifted to the other person. Or maybe the slaves were brought so cheap that the number of slaves which were brought might be in large numbers in a very small amount. Going to the next paragraph, it appears from Ibn Battuta's account that there was a considerable differentiation among the slaves. Some female slaves in the service of the Sultan were experts in music and dance, and Ibn Battuta enjoyed their performance at the wedding of Sultan's sisters. So there's a differences which is going on right here between the slaves. So we have slaves which are skilled slaves, we have slaves which are unskilled. So here there is a differentiation, skilled and unskilled slaves. So the skilled slaves, like they are known with the dancing and the music, and they are able to entertain the Sultan. We have female slaves who are also employed by the Sultan to keep a watch on his nobles. So we have a spy system right here. So the slaves are also playing a very important role, being a spy right here. So they are also keeping an eye over the nobles, what the nobles are doing when they are going for a party or when they are entertaining themselves. Are they speaking something very unusual which should be informed, which should be informed, or the information should be given to the Sultan? So this is something you can say that the slaves were basically also used as an entertainment, and they were also asked to keep their eyes and ears open so that every bit of news, any unusual thing happening in a particular event or somewhere in a particular noble's place or in a house, that should be clearly or directly informed to the Sultan. When you're coming up, slaves were generally used for domestic labor, and Ibn Battuta found their service particularly indispensable for carrying women and men on palanquins or dola. The price of slaves, particularly female slaves, were required for domestic labor. So the price of the slaves, particularly female slaves, कहता है, female slaves, especially for the domestic labor, were cheap, and every household were able to buy one or two slaves for themselves so that these slaves can help in the domestic household work. It says that the price of the slaves, particularly female slaves required for domestic labor, was very low, and most females who could afford to do so kept at least one or two of them, so they were able to buy it. So this clearly shows us the price of the slaves were too less. Last paragraph. Contemporary European travelers and writers often highlighted the treatment of a woman as a crucial marker of differences between Western and Eastern societies. Now, the Mughal, the travelers basically has compared the Western treatment of a female with the treatment of the Indian society with the female. So two things can be seen, because at that particular period of time, during the ancient period or during the medieval period or during the ancient period, you find that the sati system existed. So that sati system was a big bold. It was a very was not a very good thing for us at that time. So he was so all the travelers have tried to compare the situation of the females during the ancient and the medieval period with the situation of the females in the western part of the country at that particular period of time. Not surprisingly, Bernier chose the practice of sati for detailed description. He noted that while some women seemed to embrace death cheerfully, others were forced to die. So here he has taken this particular portion in a very in a very descriptive way, so that it can give us a very bad picture, or can give a very bad picture of the Indian society, of the woman, of the treatment of the woman in the Western countries. However, women's lives revolved around much else beside the practice of sati. Their labor was crucial in both agricultural and non-agricultural production. Women from merchant families participated in commercial activities, sometimes even taking mercantile disputes to the court of law. So the women were also involved, involved in the trading part, and they were also being a part of their husbands who were merchants. It is therefore seems unlikely that the women were confined to the private spaces of their homes. So this particular line, which clearly says that it was unlikely that the women were, the women were apart, women were confined to their homes. तो घर में जरूरी नहीं है कि उनको घर पे रखा जा रहा था, क्योंकि आखिर ने तो साफ बता रही यहाँ पे कि लड़कियों को भी जो है they were also being pushed, they were also being encouraged to participate in agriculture, non-agriculture activities, and also in the helping their husbands who were merchants. Thank you.